Brooks Running reminds us that we're all powered by something. Whether it's the me-time energy of a run after a day at the office, the electrifying energy of your first marathon, or the infectious energy of a group run with your friends. No matter what energy powers you, Brooks has gear specifically designed to unleash it. So lace up and let it out. Let's run there. Visit brooksrunning.com today to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming now only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 746 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. We are coming right back to you. This is Thursday, August 28th, just a day after we interviewed Jon Scheyer. If you have not listened to the episode, what are you doing? It's on YouTube. It's on Instagram. We've had clips on social media. It's also where you get your favorite podcast. I am Donald Wine. I'm the host for this particular episode. I have Jason Evans with me. Jason, that was a great one. That was fun.
Yeah. To some extent, if I can wax for a moment, going back to the very, very early days, 12 years ago or so when we started this, I think we probably fantasized a little bit about, hey, I wonder if we'll ever get to interview the coach. At the time, it was Mike Krzyzewski. But it's one of the access we've gotten over the years, the number of players. I mean, I can't even count. You would need both hands, both toes, and more than two people to count the number of players that we've had on this podcast over the years. We've gotten a bunch of assistant coaches, and it was great to get an active head coach. It wasn't the first time we've gotten Jon Scheyer. You and I both spoken to him at press conferences in the past, and I don't know that there was anything he said that was revolutionary or changes your perspective on him. But boy, there were some really, really interesting little nuggets, and I'm looking forward to sort of teasing some of those out for everybody today.
Yeah, so what we're going to do today is we're going to basically, Jason and I have picked 5 big takeaways from yesterday's interview with Jon Scheyer. We're going to get to that in just a second. Before we do, there's one news item that I want to mention. But before even that, we just want to let you guys know for timing purposes, if you're listening to this, this episode is going to be coming out on Friday. We are recording this on Thursday afternoon before the opener for Duke football. So you will not hear any Duke recap on this particular episode. We are going to come back at some point after the weekend. We want to take in all of the college football games that are going on and kind of reflect on Duke's position within that. So no Duke football talk on this particular episode. The news item that I want to get to before we get to our 5 takeaways, Jason, is the promotion of Emanuel Dildy to associate head coach. This was announced the other day, I guess maybe a day or two before the interview with John Scheyer. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it on the episodes prior to this with Anna Snyder or with John. But Jason, your thoughts on Dildy becoming an associate head coach alongside Chris Carrawell and being, I guess, getting that slight promotion up the bench?
Yeah, it's easy to think that Emanuel Dildy is sort of, new because he's fairly new at Duke. But this is a guy who's been around the coaching world for a long time and absolutely deserves a promotion like this to an important spot on the Duke staff. I think that this is mostly just recognizing the enhanced role that he has taken, probably that he took starting the moment that Jay Lucas left the staff. That we said last year when Jay Lucas was leaving that other guys were going to have to step up and assume bigger responsibilities. I think we now know the guy who did the most of that was probably Emanuel Dildy, and I like Scheyer doing this. Look, one of the things I've liked about what John Scheyer has done his entire time at Duke is we have an incredible legacy from Coach K. Not disparaging that at all. But John Scheyer has said functionally through his actions, I'm not trying to be the next Coach K. And part of that is he's looking outside the family a little bit more perhaps than Coach K did. He's looking for the best that he can get to fill in positions like guys on his staff. And when he hired Dildy, we were all really excited about it. And now he is rewarding Emanuel Dildy with an elevated position on the staff. Entirely appropriate. I'm thrilled to see it. I think the Duke coaching staff did a hell of a job last year, and I'm looking forward to them doing a hell of a job this year as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, the look outside the program for fresh talent, fresh perspectives when it comes to coaching is not new, right? We just have to go back 40 years for Coach K to have been doing the same thing. There wasn't a huge pool of coaches from the Duke family for Coach K to tap into early on. He built that through his tenure at Duke and was able to make it where we created this kind of coaching tree that extends. And so I think John is kind of doing the same thing. And when you think about, he still has that perspective, right? We brought in Tyler Thornton in the offseason, so it's not like he's just shunned away from Duke, brotherhood type of players to become coaches, but he's getting all perspectives. He's getting the NBA. He's getting different conferences. Mike Schrage was part of the program under Coach K. He left and then came back under John Scheyer. So you have these different perspectives, and he's encouraging his coaching staff to think broadly. Just as he talked about, you have to think broadly and be able to adapt to the changing climate. Evan Brad's coming in as another example of that because he knows these guys want to get to the NBA. Here's a guy who was coaching the NBA. He will tell you how to get there. Listen to him. He's going to get you on that path. So that sort of perspective is great. And Dildy kind of rounds that all out. So now when you think about it, under John Scheyer, right next to him, you got Chris Carrawell on one side, who is a longtime member of the Brotherhood, and you have Emanuel Dildy, who joined the Brotherhood from outside. So you have those two perspectives in his ear.
Well, to some extent, I'm going to argue that Emanuel Dildy may have been a part of the Brotherhood prior to coming to Duke because he was an assistant coach for 3 years at Northwestern with Chris Collins. Right. So this is a guy, he knows what Duke guys are like. And it's also worth noting, by the way, Dildy's primary responsibility, look, the guys, they share the scouting duties and things like that. But in terms of players, Dildy's responsible for the wings. And Duke has a really interesting collection of wings on the team this year, with Isaiah Evans, with Dame Sarr, Darren Harris, Nick Hymenia. I don't know who else you would necessarily count as a wing. Maybe Sebastian Wilkins. John Scheyer probably tells that Cameron Boozer counts as a wing.
It sounds like Cameron Boozer.
I'm teasing what we're going to be talking about in a little bit for sure. But yeah, Dildy has a really interesting set of guys that he's working with this year. And now they're working with an associate head coach. I don't know that it matters that much to them, but it's just interesting to note that about Emanuel Dildy's role on the staff.
Yeah, I mean, the responsibilities didn't change. It was well noted. We talked about it on this show when Jay Lucas left to take over at Miami. Dildy immediately assumed most of his responsibilities, including that of being the defensive scout during the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And hey, the defense did not
Did not
drop off at
disappoint.
all throughout the NCAA tournament. So congratulations to Emanuel Dildy. Okay, now that the news is out of the way, let's get to what we are mainly here to talk about, and that is yesterday's interview that we conducted with Jon Scheyer. Again, if you have not listened to the full interview, we have it in video on YouTube. We have bits and pieces of it in video across the internet, but also on our podcast feed, which hopefully you are subscribed to. If not, please do. We would really appreciate it. But Jason, we want to talk about 5 things that we took away from this particular interview. We could talk about all 13 or 14 questions.
Yeah,
We'd be here until next year. But I want to focus on 5 things that we thought were really important takeaways or really important answers that he had. Now, I want to start with the question that we posed to him about the non-conference schedule. Of course, it came out this week. We have heard most of it throughout the summer, but we got the full-length schedule, at least for the non-conference side, the other day, and everyone is talking about it being a gauntlet because it is. And I think there is part of me that says, hey, maybe we could use rest every now and then, right? We don't, but there's also the other part of me, most of me is saying, yo, there will not be a night off, and I'm here for it. And it sounds like the coaching staff is here for it as well, and Jon Scheyer. So let's play a bit of what Jon Scheyer was thinking about and seeking in developing this non-conference schedule for the ages.
Our players came here to play in those games. They did, and I believe our fans want to see us in those games. The thing that I would ask about our fan base, and you guys have such a big following, to those that are listening, is to trust the process of the course of the season, of where it goes. So you want us to play those games, great. That comes with a greater risk of what can happen. I think we're ready for it, and we're not going there just with any excuses of a loss, or that's not how we operate. But let's also keep the big picture in mind of where we're trying to go. We have to expose and be put in positions that really test us. So I'm excited. There's going to be some big-time environments. Obviously, we're playing on the road a couple times in the non-conference, the neutral site games, which is where you want to be playing in March. So I'm fired up. I'm sure I'll look back at a moment and think, John, what the heck were you doing, man? With the schedule. But I'm going to play this part of the podcast to remind myself of why we scheduled these games.
All right, Jason. The one thing that I guess the tenet of it is Duke players come to Duke to play big games, and we could talk about the quad one type of thing. And I was very grateful that he was honest about the fact that he's like, hey, I want more opportunities, more bites of the apple, as he put it. But the fact that he just said these guys want to play in these games, so let's give them these games. And hey, we might take a couple L's here and there, but this is what you come to Duke for. And so I think a lot of people are maybe appreciative of the fact that instead of seeing the directional states and the lesser major programs, we're going after Florida, we're going after Michigan, we're going to Michigan State, we're playing Kansas. Those type of games are what you came to see when you're a Duke fan.
Yeah, look, let's not forget we're playing at Army. I mean,
yeah,
Army's not that good. Duke's going to be favored big in that game. But anytime, I don't care who it is, anytime you go to someone's home floor, you're taking an enhanced risk. Look, the things that stuck out to me that Jon Scheyer spoke about, you mentioned his comment about the needing, Q1, quad one wins. When he said, hey, we went 31-3. If we went 30-4, we might not have been a number one seed. You want to your head kind of explodes when he says that. But it's also kind of true. And I mean, he recognizes that there is room for more losses, so to speak, if you challenge yourself more. And then the other side of it is he was very, very candid about saying, hey, Duke fans, be patient. He expects to win every one of these games. You and I will pick Duke to win every single one of these games in all likelihood. The Vegas odds makers will probably pick Duke to win probably every one of these games. I guess there may be one or two of them that we're not a favorite in. But I'm going to tell you right now, the schedule, Duke's not going undefeated. They're going to lose some of these games. And Scheyer was very clear with the fan base. He complimented all of you out there. He was like, hey, Jason Donald, you got a big audience. Your audience should hear this. And what they should hear is, we may lose some games. Don't lose your mind if we lose some games. And that is great advice. It's something you and I have worked hard to foster on this podcast. The notion that a loss is not a disaster. But man, it's tough. Donald, every time it happens, you want to break down every single little thing that happened. And I know Jon Scheyer's life would be easier if this was an easier schedule. I'm just going to say that. Mm-hmm. It would be. We're going to pick up a loss at some point, and people are going to be like, what the heck happened there? And there are going to be questions about Scheyer. His life would be easier, but he doesn't want to make it easy. Making it hard, iron sharpens iron. That's how you win titles.
I'm wearing the shirt from Care Lawson, handle hard better. That's what we're trying to do here on this show, and I'm sure that's what John is doing. Jason, it's funny, when he said it yesterday, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if the UNC effect kind of crept in there. The fact that UNC last year, and I'm not saying that he looked at UNC, but like UNC played 12 quad one games and won one of them, and they still barely made it into the tournament. Now, they had a Bubba Cunningham in the room. Nina King is not going to be in that room, unfortunately. She should be, but she's not going to be. But I also think that a lot of teams may have seen that and said, going after quad one games is what the committee's looking for. You don't have to win them all. And I think that was always true. But I think also he wants to look, and when they go, hey, who are these number one seeds going to be? It's clear that he has a path that he wants to take to get to Indianapolis. That path is Greenville, South Carolina for the first and second round. That path probably includes coming right here to Washington, D.C. for the East Regional before moving on. And to do that, you have to be the number one seed and perhaps even the number one overall seed. We lucked out last year in that most of the teams in the SEC kind of bumped us east. This year, who knows what that calculus could be, but he's saying, I don't want anybody to do any math. I want them to look at our record. I want them to look at our schedule and go, this team played the toughest schedule in the country. This team beat, 90% of their opponents. Give them the number one seed because they have earned it. And I think that is what he's looking for. And I'm glad that we're going to get to see some of this because, again, it's going to be a test every night. But, man, we're going to get some Final Four-esque games out of this and environments out of this. So I'm really happy for that. Jason, let's move on to the next question that we have. And it's one that I think you've posted on Twitter. I've posted as well elsewhere. But it's about Cam Boozer. And it was a well-timed question where you kind of asked, like, hey, Cooper Flagg was a point forward. Are we going to see something similar from Cam Boozer? Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think, Cam is really like a point forward. I mean, he thinks in that way, and we're fortunate to have guys that are, have size. Nick is the same way, where they can create shots for us in a different way than just one guy bringing the ball up. And plus, that's not the way the game is played anymore. I think as you look at the NBA and our guys wanting to be in that world in a short period of time, it's versatility, it's multiple ball handlers, it's playing without the ball, playing with great ball movement, great body movement, and then having the versatility where you have, just because we're not calling Cam's not our 4, not our 5, not our 3. Like he's really a guard in a big guy's body. I think we have to use that to our advantage, and he's got to use that. And I expect multiple guys initiating. And look, Caden and Caleb, I mean, they can hold down that position, what they're doing, and how they can make others better as well.
I will say at this point that I wasn't very surprised at Jon Scheyer describing Cam Boozer the way he did. But if you'd asked me 2 months ago or so, I would not have thought. I guess what I'm saying is we'd gotten some hints that Cam Boozer was playing more and more of this point forward kind of role, that Duke was going to run the offense through him, somewhat like Cooper Flagg. We've heard that over the past couple months. It was great to get John on our show to then confirm that, to literally say that Cam Boozer is a guard in a forward's body. and talk. And I love the fact that John said that's something we've got to take advantage of. That's something he's got to take advantage of, because it is a rare attribute. I want to be clear. Cam Boozer's not going to be another Cooper Flagg. I mean, when you write the story of the greatest freshman in college basketball history, Cooper Flagg's name will be as part of that story. Arguably, from a statistical standpoint and things like that, you're talking about, I don't know, Kevin Durant, Zion Williamson. I'm not sure who else. Maybe Carmelo Anthony. I mean, he's up there.
Not maybe. Carmelo is one. Probably Cooper Flagg, like 1A, because Carmelo won a title.
Yeah, we're not doing the list right now. Yeah. But so I don't want to put those kind of expectations on Cameron Boozer. But I think you are going to see Duke relying on Cam Boozer's skills, ability, his IQ, his court vision, his gravity, and how he exploits all of that. I think you're going to see Duke doing more of that than anyone expected a few months ago. I think we thought Cam Boozer walking double-double. I think maybe the question now may be, okay, yeah, he's a walking double-double, but is he going to be 2 assists or is he going to be like 4 assists per game? And there's a big difference in those two kind of numbers, believe it or not. And I'm excited because I'm getting a little bit more of a sense that it may be the 4 assists per game and probably 4 or 5 hockey assists to go with it kind of season from Cam Boozer, which would be really cool.
Here's why I'm mostly excited about Cam Boozer is the fact that once again we have a versatile athlete who's competitive. As we've talked on this show, he's arguably the winningest high school basketball player ever of all time, of 100 years of basketball. And he comes in, and I think what made Cooper Flagg great, like, think about it, Jason. Cooper Flagg, as you mentioned, had one of the best freshman seasons of all time. And it took help for him to get to a Final Four. It took a Con Knipple by his side. It took a Sion James and a Tyrese Proctor and everybody else on that team, and Kama Malawach, everyone else on that team coming together and being able to work with him. That is the challenge every single year for any squad, but mainly for a squad like Duke, where you have one guy you're trying to center an entire offense around. And I think that's where Jon Scheyer is probably thinking, okay, this is where the work is going to happen, to make it where it's not just to give the ball to Cam offense or with it ending up in his hands all the time, but naturally making it. And he talked about it, right? He said, there's going to be some set plays, but I want these guys to go based on feel. There's going to be times where Cam is going to bring the ball up and he's going to run the offense. There's going to be times where Caleb Foster or Caden Boozer or even Isaiah Evans might bring the ball up.
Well, he mentioned Nick Kamenia specifically, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And when Nick is in the game, he may have the ball. There's going to be different times where we see guys with the ball, but the idea is that everybody understands the role and everybody knows where the others are on the floor, and how that kind of cohesion, that balance always tilts, right? Doesn't matter. It's not like, someone has to always be in the corner. It doesn't mean Cam Boozer has to always be in the post. As people move, that balance shifts with it. And I think that is always the biggest test, but that is what I'm most excited about seeing, is how he can blend that balance and make it work. All these guys are able to use their talents to their maximum ability while also putting everybody in the best position for success. That is what good coaches do. That's what we did last year. And, that's what we're looking at hopefully doing once again this year. Another guy that, Jason, we want to talk about, the next question before we get to the break. It's not even a question. It was like a thing within a thing. It's the word association game. And we want to talk specifically about what he said about Pat Gongba. Here's what he said when Jason said word association, Pat Gongba. This is what Jon Scheyer said.
Pat Gongba.
Feel IQ, different. I mean, he's his guard skills. I'm giving you too many words. You said one word.
No, this is great. Man, I love that you use IQ for Pat. I would not have thought that. That's awesome.
Very smart.
Okay, Jason, the fact that I always think about this, right? I always want guys who are cerebral. I want guys who understand where everyone is on the floor. I just talked about what that means to have that balance and know where you are on the floor and how that kind of relates to everybody else on your team. But if you have a big man doing that, it's incredible. It's such a world that you open. And the fact that we could, if you're talking about a Cam Boozer alongside a Pat Gongba, and both of them are listed as cerebral or as IQ guys, that's going to open up a whole world. And I promise you, opponents are going to be upset at having to defend that.
So when I heard John Scheyer spit out the word IQ about Pat Gongba, I almost fell out of my chair. And I want to be clear, it's not that I don't think Pat's a bright guy. It's not that at all. It's that I just didn't expect, based on what I've seen from Pat so far last season, I didn't expect IQ to be the first thing that John Scheyer went to when talking about that big man. I mean, Pat has such amazing footwork in the post. He has really great vision. We saw, he and Malik Brown are both guys who, you put them on the high post, you get the ball to them in a spot, and they recognize that there are other things happening than them having the ball. And they are able to, make really great passes. That's exciting.
His touch was incredible last year. How many plays did he have where he just kind of, grabbed the ball that was seemingly destined for being out of bounds, and it ended up in the basket because he was able to corral it and lay it in.
But all these skill things, and then you say to John Scheyer, word association, Pat Gongba, and he goes, IQ. It just speaks volumes to what we haven't yet seen from Pat, but that John has seen. John is well aware of what Big Pat can do. And I think as a Duke fan, how can you not be excited about the possibility of a lineup that, as you just teased a second ago, that features Cam Boozer, who's being, who John says point forward, he's a guard in a big man's body, and Pat Gongba, who John says is, incredibly cerebral on the floor and has such a strong basketball IQ. When you're big men, you're 6'9", 6'10", 6'11 guys, the guys who are protecting the rim, the guys who are swallowing all the rebounds, the guys who teams see as a matchup nightmare. When your big men have that kind of court awareness, it just makes your team unbelievably dangerous. And we're not playing the soundbite, but one of the other things John Scheyer talked about was sharing the ball, being a connected team. John, you could tell, Donald, when we asked him about, what kind of team do you want to put together? What do you want John Scheyer to be known for? He said, connected. Pat Gongba and Cam Boozer are going to fit so beautifully into the word connected. It's just really exciting.
It's the one place on the court in my mind that you can have the biggest mismatch. A guy who is a big man who can bring the ball out, who can shoot threes, and we've heard that Pat can shoot it and will shoot with a little bit more regularity than he did last year. Obviously, Cam Boozer can shoot the three, but if you have a guy that can bring the guy out, because most teams have a big man who is firmly planted in the paint, does not go very far, does not have a very big mobility range. And if you're bringing a guy out, then it opens up the floor for other guys. Who's going to feast on that are going to be some of our guards like Caleb Foster, who love driving to the rim and finishing through contact. Dame Sarr is going to be a guy who is going to get to the rim because there's going to be that open space created by these guys. So I'm really looking forward to Pat Gongba and seeing what he can do moving forward.
Well, and it's worth noting, we're not just talking about size in terms of height. Both Pat Gongba and Cameron Boozer are listed at 250 pounds. And that's not 250 pounds that they're, barely chugging around the floor. That's 250 pounds of muscle. Yeah.
Jason, Jason, in the South, they call that wide as all outside. They're both wide as all outside.
There you go, baby.
Yeah.
Such a matchup nightmare. There's just no other way to say it than that.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we have two more of these 5 takeaways that we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about motivation, and we're going to talk about John Scheyer's best coaching move. It was an absolutely jaw-dropping answer. We'll talk about it after this.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Love espresso, drip coffee, and cold brew? With the Ninja Luxe Cafe, if you can crave it, you can brew it. Espresso, balanced. Drip coffee, rich. Cold brew in a flash. With Barista Assist technology, you brew with no stress and no guesswork and make perfect silky microfoam hands-free from dairy or plant-based milks. Shop the Ninja Luxe Cafe at ninjakitchen.com.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. 8 configuraciones diferentes, intensidad ajustable, además es calefaccionado. Y se siente tan bien. Sí, una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. Y 2, bueno, aún más. Pero cuando esas sillas de masajes vienen con un auto, se vuelven bastante prácticas. El nuevo Volkswagen Tiguan 2025 con funciones premium como los asientos delanteros con masaje disponibles. Solo parece extravagante.
Got some good news for your ears. More of that good stuff is coming up. And even better news for your hair. The best hair care is at Sephora. They've got all kinds of products for every kind of hair. From brands like Amika, Kerastase, Day, and K18. You knew where to get great audio. Now, you know where to get great hair care too. Sephora, good news for great hair. Shop hair care now at Sephora.com.
All right, we are back and we are continuing our takeaways. Jason and Donald here. Our takeaways from Jon Scheyer speaking with us yesterday, which we are so grateful for, and I'm glad that he left us so much to really digest that we needed 24 hours to really go through it all. Let's go to, Jason, the very last question we talked about, where we asked him, which was a motivational story, and we asked him for one from him. And he, of course, is not a guy who likes to talk about himself, but he immediately, and I don't think, Jason, there was any hesitation, he talked about Malik Brown coming back from that shoulder injury, the second shoulder injury last year, what he had to go through, and really the conversation about him possibly sitting out the rest of the season and Malik Brown saying, my guys need me, I'll be ready. Listen to this answer.
I want to share about Malik Brown. You know, Jason, is where we left off with Malik. So he dislocates his shoulder for the second time last year against Georgia Tech. I don't think this story has ever been told to the fullest or at all. And, you know, we knew at that time, when he was coming back, with a dislocated shoulder with what he had, there's a little bit of a risk. And unfortunately, he redislocated it. And so after that game, you know, we're talking to him and the doctors are explaining, all right, look, you need surgery. And, you know, this is sorry, but your season's ending. And Malik basically asked if there's any way he could play. And the doctors explained there's no way he could play without the risk of that happening again. And obviously the risk of the pain was real. I mean, Malik was in an incredible amount of pain. And he had never played in the NCAA tournament before. And no hesitation, no second guessing. He said, I'm not leaving my teammates. I will do anything to be on the floor with them again. anything I can do. And so here he was, really 2.5 weeks go by. He was at 50%. I mean, he couldn't, and he made an immediate impact on our team winning. Particularly, we did not win, but in that Final Four game, I mean, he catapulted us gave us amazing momentum. And I think that sacrifice, that toughness, you don't see very often. And I thought he wowed me with his character, his selflessness, and just how bad he wanted to be out there as a competitor. That gets me going every time I think about that.
Okay, we had heard some of the story, Jason, about him them deciding against surgery. We had heard through the grapevine, like, yeah, surgery's being considered, but he's going to try and tough it out and get back. But I didn't know it was to the length of, like, basically everybody telling Malik, your season's done. And he was like, no, it isn't. We're still playing. And being able to get back. And again, as I told John, it speaks to what Malik has been a fan favorite since he got here, but it speaks to the, again, the grit and determination that endears him to a lot of people, but also, again, it speaks to what he feels about this team and Coach Scheyer and the coaching staff and him wanting to get back. It wasn't like someone saying, "Hey, can you do it?" It was basically them saying, "Yo, sit your butt down. You're done." And he goes, "No, we're not done. We have a finish line, and I'm going to run across that finish line with you." That I want to run through a brick wall from Malik Brown, much less the rest of the team. So I thought that was a really cool motivational story. And again, it was a nice pivot by Jon Scheyer because we were asking for him. But hey, I'll take that pivot.
Yeah, to me, one of the most telling things about it was the fact that, we asked for a Scheyer story and Scheyer gave us a Malik Brown story.
Right.
And that's sort of who he is. Incredibly accomplished, a guy who has absolute confidence in himself. And yet you try to get him to toot his own horn. And instead he's like, no, let me tell you about one of my players. And I think that's a beautiful aspect. Jon Scheyer's a hell of a recruiter. Jon Scheyer's a hell of a team builder. Like you say, guys are willing to run through walls for him. One of the reasons for that is because, of that aspect of his character. But the other thing that I take away from it is, John talked a little bit about, Malik was in real pain. Pain's a terrifying thing. And for Malik Brown to, clearly in that moment, he had just experienced the pain. And the doctors are functionally saying to him, you can't come back. And he goes, no, I'm going to come back. And they go, if you come back, there is another big risk that you're going to feel this pain again. And Malik Brown was like, yeah, I'm not interested in thinking about those things. I'm interested in helping my teammates and helping us reach our goal. It's just, I don't really have words to describe it. It's courageous. The reason Jon Scheyer picked that story is because Jon Scheyer admires Malik Brown for that decision. We all thought Malik was done for the year. Come on. It wasn't even a question.
We almost begged for it, right? Like, we're like, I don't want him to experience that pain again. Like, go ahead. Like, we got it from here. Like, sit and rest up. We need you next year, that sort of thing. But he wouldn't have it. Yeah.
It's so impressive. And it speaks to the bond of all these guys. We're kind of repeating ourselves here. We can wrap it up. But Malik Brown cared about his teammates. His teammates cared about him. And he was like, I'm there. Patch me up. Put me back in.
I will say also, it's not just courageous in the sense of him trying to fight back and risk and, through the risk of that pain, but also, Jason, a separated shoulder, from what I hear, I've knock on wood, from what I hear, it is one of the most excruciating injuries.
Oh, I don't even like
that you could ever go through.
Yeah.
He did it twice he had to go through it twice in a month. And honestly, he was risking his own career. He was risking him not being able to come back at all.
Yeah.
And to do that, and look, when Grant Hill was on the Pistons and he messed up his knee and his ankle, I remember everybody in Detroit saying, like, yo, just pack it in. And he said, no, I'm going to take this team to the playoffs because that's what I was brought here to do. and it messed up the rest of his career, right? He could have been a top 5 player of all time if not for that injury. But everyone in Detroit reveres him because they said, man, that man put his career on the line, his livelihood on the line. The fact that, for years he couldn't walk right. He did that for this team in this city. Yeah, nobody says anything slanderous about Grant Hill around Detroit, and nobody will say anything slanderous about Malik Brown around these parts. That's the legend that he has created for himself, and that's why we're looking so much forward to him coming back this season. Jason, the last topic that we have is probably the most eye-opening answer that Jon Scheyer gave us, and it's about the best coaching move that he has done in his 3 years as a head coach. And it's funny, initially he talked about the recruiting angle, but Jason, he then brought up the Alabama game, and I think both of us were just kind of like, how do you respond to that? Because it was perfect.
I want to say, Donald, when we were discussing our questions, folks should know that we had limited time with Jon Scheyer. We didn't talk about Emanuel Dildy, not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't have time. And we were panicked about trying to get all these questions in. You and I had had really mapped out exactly what we wanted to ask and when to ask it and things like that. This question was one that kind of came to us late. And I was like, God, we just got to ask, because I think, the jury's sort of still out on how great a coach is Jon Scheyer. Everyone's like, yeah, great recruiter and stuff. But and let's go ahead and just play the answer. But to me, I was like, this one came to us late, and I'm so glad that we asked it. Let's hear what Jon Scheyer had to say about his best coaching move.
For me, it was our game against Alabama going to a Final Four. They're coming off the game against BYU. Alabama scores 113 points. They hit 25 threes, which was obviously a record and an incredible number. So I think the tendency as a coach, and probably what I would have done year 1 or maybe year 2, is to overreact to that and really be so concerned about the 3. And I thought our staff did an incredible job prepping for that game. One, when you look at their threes, 25 threes, 3 of their players had 21 of the 25. And so it's a tendency all of a sudden to be stretched out with all of them. And I thought we did a great job of analyzing their threes and realizing it comes from hitting the paint and then spraying it out. And so we really kept it compact. And our thing was to not let them in the paint, which is a little scary because you're watching them for 2 days on film and watching them hit 25. I probably saw them hit 75 threes. Watch the game through 25, 25. And I was like, all right, what the heck here? But we felt pretty confident, very confident, that keeping them out of the paint was going to be the key. And I thought our players did an incredible job talking, switching, guarding the ball, and doing their work to prevent them from getting in the paint.
God, I mean, Donald, for him to come up with that answer, I remember vividly after Alabama beat BYU, like everyone was picking Duke. Duke was we were at the top of all the advanced metrics and everything. We were like historically great on offense, and was like, yeah, Duke's getting to the Final Four. Duke's winning the title. Everyone, we were the favorite. And then when Alabama did the NCAA tournament, what they did to BYU, people were like, oh, maybe we spoke too soon. Bama may be beating Duke. And then for us to come out, it was shocking to watch the way Duke manhandled Alabama, the way Alabama was unable to do what they had done all season long. People, go back and look at Alabama's scores all year. I think I didn't tally up all. I think that they scored less than 80 points like 3 times or 4 times all season long.
Yeah.
And Duke held them to 65. This is a team that
beat the brakes off them.
Alabama was routinely putting up 90-plus points during the season. Mid-80s, 90s, even occasionally, like they had 100 and something teen against BYU in the Sweet 16. And here's Duke just totally made Alabama look like they didn't know what they were doing on offense. And to hear Jon Scheyer, I haven't heard him tell that story before, say to us that he was like, I was all ready to be like, we got to shut off the 3. And then he goes, and then we watched the tape. And I went, no, We shut off the middle. We strangle the middle, and then they won't get the threes. It seems obvious in retrospect, but at the time, it seems like a mad genius. And yeah, I'm glad Scheyer pointed that out so we could all admire his genius, because that's what it was.
Jason, I remember the preview that you and I did for that Alabama game. Again, right after they hit 26, I think they're 26 of 52. They shot 50%.
That was outrageous. Yeah.
It shot the most threes in NCAA tournament history in one game. And I remember you and I saying, okay, we got to limit the three, but how are we going to do it? And everybody probably in America was looking at that score line that they had, and they said, well, Duke had a great run, but that's going to be fun. And I'm sure in that arena, there was somewhere, it was like the Cam Newton meme of him just kind of like, John Scheyer was probably sitting in the corner somewhere. They did what now? And he just probably looked and said, okay. And just walked off and walked into the video room and said, all right, guys, we got our work cut out for us, but that's why we're in this position. And to not only limit what they were able to do so successfully the game before, but again, beat the brakes off of them in the process. I'm glad that he picked that, because that's definitely up there for one of the greatest coaching, turnarounds, and to do it in less than 48 hours, right? Because we had seen what Alabama did, and Alabama had had like a 2-hour head start, right? Because they were the game before. And so they had a head start on us. And so we're sitting there like, okay, well, this is going to be a problem. And we already knew it was, but to do that and to out-coach Nate Oates, who was very public about the fact that he thought that he was the best coach in the tournament. So to do that, especially against him, was a lot of fun. But the way he did it is something that, again, everyone was focused on the fear, and he ran towards it, because my man does not duck any smoke. Jason, those are the 5 takeaways that we had. Anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say to everybody out there in DBR podcast land, send us an email if you've got something else, or if you've got the same. We'd love to hear from all of you what you took away from our interview with John Scheyer. What do you think are the most important points he made? And I don't know, how much time we'll have. I don't know how many emails we'll get about this, but if you got some good ones, we'll read them on the air. We want to hear your analysis of what the coach had to say when Donald and I chatted with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say, like, hey, the emails about like, hey, you should have asked him this, as Jason said.
No,
we could have. If we had 4 hours with him, we would still have too many questions. The fact that we were able to get all these questions in like 23 minutes, we even got to ask him, like, hey, can you stay an extra minute? We got a couple of really good questions for you, and knocked them out of the park, because that's what he does. So again, we really appreciate John Scheyer, and we should say Kyle Serba for helping us, from Duke SID, for helping us set up that interview, which was very, very cool. And we hope, of course, to do it again, whether it's on an annual basis, semi-annual, whatever you want to do. The door is always open.
Hey, I think I didn't say our email address, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. That's the email address. Send us your thoughts on the Scheyer interview, dbrpodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And also, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we are on YouTube. Go subscribe to us in all those places.
Look for Duke Roundup everywhere.
At Duke Roundup. We're trying to streamline our services for you. But that will do it for this episode. We'll be back after the Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the first weekend of football. Go Duke Gang tonight. Again, that's the 7:30 kickoff on ESPN Plus. So tune in there. Actually, you're going to be listening to this on Friday. So hopefully you've watched it. We're seeing into the future. But we'll be back to recap that and all the other college football and everything else that comes our way. He's Jason. I'm Donald. This is the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home.